Canceling civility and the dumbest bill in America. Yeah, you heard that right. Canceling civility. What a surprise that we're doing a podcast on the lack of civility in the United States of America. And also, of course, the dumbest bill in America. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials, and our millennial joining us today is Garrick Ross.
Happy
Mr. Jersey Shore.
Wednesday. Yeah, we're going to talk about the boardwalk later.
Yeah, we have some boardwalk stories about
expertise.
The lack of civility on boardwalks as well as elsewhere. And also Christopher Hopkins, our assistant producer, and Adam Couture, our producer. So, canceling civility, don't mess with the Alamo. As you know, we have lots of historical monuments throughout the United States.
An expert on the Alamo here.
You're an expert on the Alamo.
Well, my mother lives outside of San Antonio, so I've been, every time I go there, I make it a habit of stopping and seeing the Alamo. And if anybody ever gets a chance to in their life to go travel to Texas, go check out the Alamo. It really is, it's a sight to behold. It's a really, really fascinating piece of architecture with great history, and it's also in a great town. You should check it out.
I didn't know that. I know that's where your mom lived. So get this. So George P. Bush, he's the Texas Land Commissioner. He is also the son of Jeb Bush.
Low energy Jeb.
But George P. Bush is, of course, young, and he's the Texas Land Commissioner. And he was watching social media and noticing that during this time of cancel culture, which includes especially getting rid of historical monuments across the United States.
Or defacing them.
Or just defacing them, but which could potentially destroy them as well.
Yeah, that's the critique.
That, he wanted people to know that he wasn't going to put up with the Alamo being destroyed in any way, shape, or form. Or defaced. And so he tweeted out, he says, demonstrators who have taken to the streets after the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis have taken aim at a number of historical locations and monuments. This is what he tweeted, including the Lincoln Memorial, the World War II Memorial, and the statue of General Casimir Pulaski on the National Mall in Washington, as well as Duluth's Clayton Jackson McGee Memorial, Boston's Robert Gould Shaw and 54th Regiment Memorial, and Denver's Colorado Monument, et cetera, et cetera. So the point is, George P. Bush is saying, look, despite all this stuff that's being attacked nationwide, it's not going to happen here in Texas, and it's not going to happen with the Alamo. So he tweets a picture of all these armed Texas Rangers and others in front of the Alamo, like, come, we're here, we're waiting, and we're not going to let you do it. We're going to shoot you.
Texas is really cool because they have, very loose gun laws, so you can open carry, but they also have really cool militia laws where, you can join a public militia that's sponsored by the state and deputized by your local sheriff. And a lot of them have the authority to come and do things like this, where they'll come. And these are just like retired Army veterans or just people who are interested in
I did not know
preserving the history of Texas.
So they can come
and they volunteer
defend.
And they work with the police force, and they do it in conjunction with each other, and they stand guard and they watch these monuments. Yeah, it's awesome.
So George P. Bush, we don't have a clip on this, but it's just interesting because it shows you the difference between the states.
Yeah.
That you have a state of Texas where it's like, no, you're not going to...
Taking great care for these things, because they understand that regardless of their state's history...
You're not going to cancel us, you're not going to cancel history, and you're certainly... And by the way, it's a very dangerous precedent. It's the Alamo, but even if it weren't the Alamo, we're going to talk about this more as this podcast, including with the dumbest bill about canceling history. It's really stupid, but you don't change history by canceling it. All you do is you limit your ability to learn from it.
Especially like an object like the Alamo, which, it's about the Texas Revolution. It's about seceding from the Spanish authority. It is totally unrelated to a lot of the issues that are being talked about today.
Oh, they'll find a way of... Look, they're going to find a way.
Of course, and that's part of the problem with cancel cultures.
Cancel culture has no limits.
There is always some way that you can find fault in everything. So
because part of the problem with cancel culture is it's allowing civility in the American psyche, if you will, to go away. So there used to be a time, and that time still exists in many parts of the country, by the way. It's not completely gone, but there would be a time when you would walk by someone on the sidewalk and you'd say, hey, how you doing? Even if you didn't know the person. Yeah. And they'd say, oh, pretty good, nice day, yeah, and small talk, and then you'd walk on. Well, that's not the case in many towns, and it's because the cancel culture has enabled people to think that it's okay to just get rid of anything, including civility, any monument, any part of civility in society That's the problem, and it's exactly what's happening now. And good for you, George P. Bush, for stopping the Alamo from being destroyed, let alone defaced. And so speaking of that, speaking of hurting people and the lack of civility, a 92-year-old woman peacefully using her walker, she is 92 years old, and she's living in Manhattan. And let me just say, living in Manhattan is hard enough.
Oh, yeah.
But living in Manhattan as an elderly person with a walker has got to be absolutely difficult. Has to be excruciating
at 92
to live there. Yes. But nonetheless,
she's chugging along, doing the best
she's outside getting some sun, some good vitamin D, walking along. And what happens? A young black gentleman walks by her and without notice whatsoever, socks her right in the head. She falls over and hits her head on the sidewalk and also hits it on a fire hydrant.
Oof.
And she wasn't expecting this, of course, because in America, as I said, there was a time, and there still is that time in certain communities. By certain communities, I mean usually they tend to be more small towns and more rural areas where people are actually nice to each other, and they actually know each other, and they actually care about each other. But
that everybody knows everybody kind of a place.
Which, by the way, I think is going to be coming back in America, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But in the meantime, we have a clip on this poor 92-year-old woman getting whacked, and here it is.
Police are on the hunt for a man who attacked a 92-year-old woman in Manhattan. Video shows the suspect walking down 3rd Avenue in Gramercy Park when he suddenly pushed the woman and kept walking. That push caused the woman to fall on the ground and hit her head on a fire hydrant. The woman fortunately expected to recover.
She's okay, which is amazing.
Good for
She's
her.
92.
That's a tough lady.
Yeah, it is a tough lady, but here's the thing.
Shouldn't have to have that happen to her.
There's a video of this, obviously, because there was an outdoor camera along the sidewalk somewhere. As far as I know, this gentleman has not been arrested. But here's the problem when you have a lack of civility and you say, well, the looters have a right to loot, or people have a right to burn things down, or people have a right to engage in a certain level of violence because of the George Floyd matter and other matters. No, actually, you don't have the right to do that because a civilized society uses the rule of law to be able to remain civilized. And when you get rid of the rule of law, then this is what happens. You get rid of civility, and the end of civility means that you can just cancel any part of society that you want, that you disagree with, and there's going to be no consequence.
Or you can just have like carte blanche to do whatever you want. You know, it doesn't even have to be for a cause. I mean, I wonder what ran through that gentleman's mind as he's walking down the street and he sees this poor lady and he just gives one to her. Like, you know.
I think he's probably angry, right? I think he's probably angry, and
what did she do to you, though? You know,
nothing.
Fight the man.
He's angry at the world.
Rage against the machine.
We don't know this for sure.
92-year-old grandma.
Garrick, we don't know this for sure at Mark the Millennials, but it's certainly worth to speculate. He's probably angry at the world. He's probably watching CNN, MSNBC, telling him that he should be angry at the world and that he should cancel the United States of America and the culture. And what does he do? He goes after the people that are most vulnerable among us. And this is the problem. The reason we have rule of law, the reason we have it, is to protect the most vulnerable among us.
I think it's also a failure of the law that, you know, we can't apprehend people like this. You know, it shouldn't be hard to go and find and arrest somebody who commits such a dastardly deed like that. You know, that lady deserves justice, and, you know, irregardless of the things going on in the world, you know, there should be a level of decorum between you and your neighbor. You know, that's how you build, you know, community and cooperation and love for each other.
It's interesting.
Good interactions and helping your neighbor.
The place I grew up was part of a larger city, but I lived kind of like right on the edge of the outside of the city limits, and so it was a town that felt like a small town.
Yeah.
Whereby everybody kind of knew each other, and you knew who the troublemakers were, you knew who the great people were, and you knew who to avoid, who to engage, and you also were nice to people. And you had local stores. You would walk to the store, up the block to the store. You would shop there. You didn't need a car as a kid to get there. If you needed anything, it would be a bicycle. You used your bicycle to get there. Look, I'm not one of those persons like, remember the good old days? Because you know what the fact of the matter is? There are plenty of places across this country that are small town oriented, that are great places to live. And I predict that based on what we're seeing in America's blue cities, where the blue city mayors are looking the other way and letting culture and the cancel culture run rampant and letting crime run rampant and looting run rampant, that you're going to find more and more people say, you know what, honey, because of broadband and because of the internet, I can work from anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm going to move to a small town
Mobility.
where I actually know people and I can actually have relationships with people versus the big city where people just can destroy everything I've built my entire life.
What keeps running through my head is when I think about this is, what if the gentleman just said hi to the lady, was nice to her. How are you doing tonight? Can I help walk where you're going?
Yes.
Can I help you? And maybe he makes a friend, or somebody becomes sympathetic to his cause, or who knows what infinite great things could have come out of such a simple interaction like that. But the natural reaction or the reaction was to hurt and to harm, and
But you said you were a Boy Scout, didn't you?
I was.
Wasn't there a time when Boy Scouts would help that lady, the 92-year-old across the street?
Oh, the stereotypical, yeah. You help your.
Did you ever do that as a Boy Scout?
I mean, no, it's not.
No,
it's not as
millennials don't walk people across the street anymore.
There's also not
Boy Scout millennials.
Mark, there's not a lot of roads to walk across where I was from, but there's not a lot of grandmas just walking down the road regularly.
You didn't have roads in Jersey Shore?
I mean, not the type that Mark. My point is just there's not.
He doesn't know what his point is.
There's not a long line of ladies standing around begging to be walked across the street. It was just something that never came up.
You're saying you weren't attracted to 90-year-old women.
Oh,
okay.
Oh, I mean, I would hope not.
No, but you would certainly help them, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Would you still do that?
I mean, from my own personal experience, I have two elderly grandparents. I stayed close to school to be able to help them and their community and
And they're still alive.
Yes. And,
that's awesome.
And it's about not just helping them, but helping their neighbors, helping the people they go to church with, and building that sense of trust and reliability and.
I'm just curious.
They can look for me to help them and assist. No, I understand because when you see things like this, it makes you lose a little bit of faith in people.
And especially generations that are
because you're always taught that
young.
The elderly are the most vulnerable among us, and you're supposed to protect them and make sure that they're okay because there are elders and you're supposed to respect your elders.
I also want to talk about something that is difficult to talk about, but everybody avoids, and that is that in this picture that we saw, where the 92-year-old woman was punched in the face, the side of the head, wasn't expecting it, by a black man walking down the street. No one ever wants to talk about the fact that there is that, right? We see this a lot. We see this a lot where it seems to be, especially lately, but there's unfortunately a black guy who decides, and he's young, he probably doesn't have a good home life or good guidance, because if he did, he never would have done this, quite frankly. And you say to yourself, well, why is it that people have difficulty getting together and meeting together and discussing problems with one another of different races? And this isn't helpful. That's where I'm trying to go with this.
Yeah,
this
I think
is not helpful.
I think
to see
that sort of
this
speaks to the point that I was making earlier, where it's like, the interactions you make with the people around you help facilitate people being sympathetic and helpful to the issues that are important to you. Like I said, if that man just says hello to grandma, or he does his best Boy Scout, and helps her across the street or whatever, we're talking about a much different thing right now.
She's probably on her way to buy something. She probably needs help from someone. And by the way, just to make sure that we show that we are fair and balanced and so forth, because we do try to be that, is look. You could also make the argument that, well, gee, isn't it typical that there's this white cop that has his knee on this black man's neck? The black man basically he dies.
He's murdered. Yeah.
He's murdered by the police officer. But the problem is that we see these things and then we brush with broad strokes and say, well, that means all police officers are that way. They're not. Those police officers were that way. And just those police officers, until someone else proves otherwise. It's an individual responsibility thing. Just like it is with this young black guy who decided to whack this 92-year-old woman on the side of the head. And this is what's dangerous, because you can't have a society built on the fact that you're going to have retribution because it's going to just run rampant everywhere, and we're never going to be able to build bridges and be able to fix things if that's the case. And so I just want to be fair and point that out. Maybe that was on this guy's mind, and he thought, you know what? There's this 92-year-old woman. I'm just going to hit her on the side of the head. Look, we need to talk about this stuff. No one wants to talk about it because so many people see these kinds of things and they say, oh, that's typical because it's a young black guy that did that. I'm not saying me, I'm saying so many other people say. Likewise, I think so many African Americans, blacks say, oh, gee, isn't that typical? It's a white cop and he did that. Senator Tim Scott.
An amalgamation of our society where everything is so
generalized,
polarizing too. Like everything is absolute. Like, to a lot of people, unfortunately, see that incident and be like, see, here's proof that, they are all bad. And then, and likewise, with these interactions with the police officers who make national headlines, the same lessons or the same, views would be drawn from the events. And it's like,
the idea that is the way
normal.
All police
that's the way
officers
everything
are
happens.
And
that's the way everybody treats each other. And it's terrible because it's like,
I'm glad you brought that up.
This is one of the downsides of the immediate, technological society that we have, is that all these things are just thrown out into the internet, and
there's a camera everywhere,
and everything
is recorded,
and you can find so much information that will confirm whatever your natural bias is. And it's part of the reason that I think that we're so polarized, and we can't.
I'm glad you brought that up, Derek.
We can't reform any of these things.
And that's a millennial thing, right? The millennials, they've got cameras everywhere, and basically, I'm glad you brought that up because that's kind of what I was trying to say. I'm just going to restate it just to make sure it's very clear. So a white guy or a white woman watches this video where this black gentleman who's young whacks this 92-year-old woman in the side of the head and knocks her out. Could have killed her. So it's a miracle that she's still alive.
Especially since she hit her head on a fire hydrant.
Or didn't have a stroke, or broke her hip. A white guy might look at that and go, you know what? It figures, right? It's this young punk and, looter and all that stuff. So he's painting.
Shut out everything.
He's shut out everything. He's painted with a very broad brush stroke. And then you have black women and black women watching this Mr. Floyd getting murdered by a police officer while three other police officers look on. And they say, isn't that typical? And they broad brush and say, here's a black guy who's being killed by police officers, and that's the way it is all across America in every single police department. In fact, all white people. And I think that is so dangerous, and we're seeing
the fallout of this and everything that we do. Look at the legislature. I mean, this is a political podcast, so I think it's always important to talk about these things in the concept of politics. And while we're talking about real life situations impacting real people, there's no better way to see the effects of them than how the legislature approaches its job.
Right.
I mean, when was the last time that you can think of that Congress has actually solved any major issue in the United States? Everything is always punting footballs and getting one over on this guy for this and that issue because, they can always find a way to spin everything to fit their confirmation bias that we've just been talking about. And it's instances like this that.
But does legislation really?
Well, that's a whole other story. Whether our views on government, but I mean, just in terms of the political posturing of how people deal with, these issues in respect to politics, how our politicians
MSNBC and CNN and NBC in particular, those three networks have been, in my opinion, incredibly irresponsible during this whole episode, the Floyd episode, because they are feeding into the narrative of the left and the cancel culture and the culture of incivility that it's okay to be part of the cancel culture. It's okay to loot. It's okay to do these things. And it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous when you have major media outlets that are basically supporting what you're doing. But look, this is not uncommon because we have another story, a story about Sonic a Sonic, which is a fast food joint.
Restaurant. It's
and that's
like your last. It's one of the last like drive-up service places.
So yeah, explain that. It's what happens. You drive into a Sonic.
You drive into a little station. You park your car, and then you press the button on the board, which is right outside your window. And
like from the 1950s.
Yeah, and you order, and they come roller skating it out.
They roller skate it still.
I think they do.
I think they still. Okay.
Some places, yeah.
Do they have helmets on?
No, they would wear their hats.
Crash helmets.
Mark, I could never work there. I can't roller skate.
Yeah. So they roller skate out to your car, and you order your food electronically. Is that how it works?
You talk into a
little thing, and then they bring the food out on a tray. And
now,
then
let's not mistake anything.
You eat it in the car, more or less.
Yeah. Now, let's not mistake anything here. Sonic is not great.
This is the millennial perspective. Sonic is not great. So
it is.
We know what you guys
delicately saying that it is good at certain
millennials
things.
see Chick-fil-A as being way up here.
A tier.
Yes.
A tier. And then McDonald's is like B or C, depending on which McDonald's you go to. But Sonic is like a C minus. So it's passing because it got some questions right, but most of it didn't really know the material. Like it doesn't do burgers, never order their chicken. Basically stick to the potato products and their ice creams.
Yeah, that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
So Sonic also has, in addition to that like drive up in your little space and you order, they also have a drive-through.
In case you don't want to stay, you want to go home.
You want to, yeah, because you can eat in the car on the way home or take it home and eat. So a couple are in a car, they drive to the drive-through of Sonic, like a regular drive-through, and they get upset because the wrong sauce is included in their bag.
Oh boy.
I'm not sure what sauce they wanted, but it's the wrong chicken sauce. And it leads
that's why
to
they
this.
went wrong, never ordered chicken from Sonic.
It leads to this massive altercation and kind of supporting, but we have hundreds of these stories nationwide. We're just picking them out from different states, red states and blue states, by the way, because this is Oklahoma we're talking about now, the Oklahoma Sonic. Before it was in Manhattan. And because we're talking about canceling civility and the getting rid of civility. And this is a great example. How often have you driven through a drive-through and the food has been wrong?
Yeah, I mean all the time.
All the time.
Or I don't get the sauce, or they give me the wrong sauce, or they forget something. It's just the way that it is.
And you say to yourself, you have a really basic job that's very like automated in its way.
Like, how do you mess this up?
How do you mess this up, right? I mean, everything is compartmentalized. It's really straightforward. You even ask me what I want. You have it in the computer. Just double check in the computer, throw it in the bag, get it to me, and I'm gone. But no, that doesn't happen. And when it doesn't happen, you just say, hey, you know what?
Honestly, half the time to me, it's
not
even worth my time. I just drive away. I mean, because honestly, what I spend $7, like. I know what I was getting when I pulled in. Like
you got your tater tots at Sonic, right?
Yeah, like I knew what I was
potato
getting.
Products are safe.
I knew the place that I was ordering from. Like I'm not there because I was expecting like 5-star service.
So get this. So this couple it's just a complete lack of civility. They go crazy.
Yeah.
And we have a clip on this, and it's very detailed, and you have to watch it and listen to it. Here it is.
Instead, the wrong sauce on an order of Sonic chicken tenders reaching a boiling point at Southeast 44th and Sunny Lane.
Guess they were upset over their order.
The driver hands back the food, pointing to the receipt after an exchange of words.
The store telling them, hey, you know what, we're refusing your service.
Minutes later, the food chain's manager throws the cash back into the car, asking repeatedly for the pair to leave. But the woman unbuckles her seatbelt and gets out, pressing her face against the glass, allegedly even trying to get in through the side door. That's when a man in the passenger seat hops out and starts punching the window, the woman dragging him away, but he breaks free, coming right back, demanding his food. Meanwhile, employees locking the building down, and just when they thought it was all clear, the man reaching down onto the floorboard and chunking a glass bottle straight at them, shattering the front door and speeding off. Del City investigators now on the hunt, ready to press charges.
Yeah, because
go get them, boys.
It was really you just had the wrong sauce.
Oh my god.
So civility. What would civility be? It would be,
hey man,
guys,
can I have the sauce?
I wanted that special sauce that you guys put on chicken, and it's not included. And
Can I get it?
Hey, can I have it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can
I mean, Chris is
can
over there going, I
exchange
want
this?
my Chick-fil-A sauce,
Yeah.
for it. But this was not Chick-fil-A. This was Sonic. And as Garrick has made very clear, millennials have it down like C-. But he apparently still goes and orders the potato tots or the tater tots.
Tots or some ice cream. Now, Mark, I can't say this is an isolated incident to Sonic. My first job in high school was
Did you work there?
No, I worked for Rita's Italian Ice. So
Okay.
I was basically like a
On the
glorified-
Jersey Shore?
I mean, yeah, that's where I grew up.
Okay.
And I
Did you
can
mess
think
up?
of so many. I mean, no, not really. Of course, sometimes like they'll mumble and you thought they said something, but it's like it's just ice. You dump it out and you go get a new one, you bring it back, and it's a whole 30 seconds of added time here. We're not talking about a big catastrophe. It's like, but you'd be surprised how many people like take things like this so personally. Like you just insulted their life, their wife,
It's
and
a
their kids.
mistake.
It's like an
just a
honest mistake that can be rectified, and people are so nasty about it, and they yell at you, and it's like.
And I think that's what happened here. I think the couple in the car became uncivil immediately.
Yeah.
And so then the Sonic said, look, we just want you to go. Here's your money. Here's your money back.
I think they did the right thing. Like once they started being uncivil off the cuff, it's like, hey, I just.
And then the manager was like, go, because I don't even want to have this altercation here.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, that couple had to have the last word. So he throws a bottle into the window, the glass window that's the door, and then breaks it.
I bet you I bet
stupid.
you when they do find these people and arrest them, they won't have any remorse. And I think that's the true tragedy here, is that a lot of people don't really understand the consequence of their actions, or that the things that they do have, with bad intentions like that are just.
There's no discipline at home.
There's no discipline for those people. There's no, remorse for them. They just accept, they will always be right.
Yes.
They should have had the right sauce off the.
And I've run into people like that before. It's interesting. I will date myself. Back in the 1970s, we did not have self-serve gas stations. Just like you in New Jersey, you still haven't figured out self-serve gas stations.
I will defend. I will defend having gas attendants for as long as I live.
So in the 1970s, we had only full-serve gas stations, and then, of course, eventually, self-serve started making its way into Americana. But there was a gas station that I worked at, and it was an Esso gas station. Now it's Exxon. And my father owned the Esso gas station.
Standard
So
oil.
therefore, I could work there. Because he owned it, I could work there at a really young age. How young? 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
And so I worked there, and I would go, and because it was self-serve, for you podcast listeners, you probably don't know this, I would actually have to walk around to the driver's side of the car. The guy never got out of the car, or lady never got out of the car. What would you like, sir? Oh, I'd like you to check my oil and fill the tank up. Okay. So you would go fill the tank up. You would go check the guy's oil. This is back when you would do that for people. Then my father made us, because he wanted people to come back, he made us wash not just their front windshield, but their back windshield.
Oh, wow.
So that way they would keep coming back, and it would show that we're really trying to, and that was, of course, all free. Sometimes people tipped me, which is kind of nice, right? They give you like 50 cents or something like that. That was probably...
Back when that was big money, right, Mark?
But you could get a Coke or something, all right? So why am I saying this? Well, because every once in a while, you had that jerk. And he would say, when you pulled the gas thing out, the gas nozzle out, you got some gas on my car. I need you to wipe all that. I mean, they just like went crazy. And my father always taught us a maxim in life when you are working somewhere. The customer is always right. And that is a really simple concept, that if you have that maximum in your life, that the customer is always right, you always should be self-deprecating and say, sir, you're absolutely right. Let me wipe that off. I'm really sorry. I was in a hurry today. It's a little hot outside. It's a great way
to diffuse
a situation versus what we just saw at Sonic and what we're seeing all across America, which is the inability to be self-deprecating, and especially when you're working somewhere, or no matter how bad the person is. And sometimes that person is so bad that you do have to take it to the next level, which is to not fight them. Just say, well, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'm really sorry. There's nothing else I can do. And the person starts giving you mouth, well, I'm never coming back here again. I understand. I'm really sorry.
Anyway.
But See, that's New Jersey. You said, well, I don't want your business anyway.
I wouldn't say that
well,
to
that's
the
gonna,
customer.
I'm sorry, that's going to increase the, it's going to increase the
I mean, might run through my mind, but I wouldn't say it out loud, Mark. I mean, I'm not suicidal here. Jeez.
So meanwhile, it's talking about incivility still. The CNN camera crew at that Wendy's in Atlanta,
yes.
the greater Atlanta area, they were there because the Wendy's was burned down. And so they were filming the Wendy's as it was being burned down. And the camera crew that was there was being attacked by the cancel culture because I guess they didn't want to be filmed while they were burning down the Wendy's because there would be, of course, some corroborating evidence that certain people were there, who was there. So it says here in the CNN article, a photojournalist, the producer and I were trying to get a video of what was happening, and there were protesters very angry that we were recording this, that this being the burning down of the Wendy's, and they tried to block our cameras. So the journalist's camera, and to block my cell phone from taking the video, and at that point they got aggressive with our camera crew, and they started breaking our equipment. I mean, once again. Now here's a case where the person isn't buying a chicken sandwich at Sonic, they're actually burning down a Wendy's, and the media is trying to do their job.
And document it, yeah.
Where are the police? I'm sure the fire department was probably getting there or there, of course, because the first responders are especially our fire departments and police departments are good people, and there are a few bad, police officers. We already know that. But the fact of the matter is, there's the cancel culture, right? CNN's there egging people on their network constantly that this is okay. Then they get attacked.
And then they'll be the first ones to tell you, oh, this is a tragedy, an assault on the free press. And,
this shouldn't happen. How did it happen to us of all people?
Fox News did it.
That's right. All we do is we tell people that looting is okay and that, it's okay to burn down your neighborhoods and so forth, and it's okay to be angry, but when it happens to us, not a good idea. Way to go, CNN.
Just CNN things. They're the ultimate kings of dunking on themselves. I mean, one of their primetime news hosts, his sole job is to watch Fox News and then talk about Fox News on his CNN show. It's like
who's that?
Chris Calizza.
Oh yeah. Oh god, that guy is just.
Or Brian Stelter.
Brian Stelter. Oh my god.
Reliable sources.
Yeah, reliable. So reliable. So, meanwhile, with the cancel culture and with the incivility that's happening across the country, now we come all the way back from Oklahoma and Atlanta to Maryland. And in Ocean City, Maryland, it's a resort town on the ocean. And it's got a big boardwalk. And the boardwalk lasts for how long is the boardwalk? How many blocks?
Like 30, I think.
30 blocks. It's a huge boardwalk.
I feel like it's more than that, but I'm sure you would know.
More. It's around there.
Okay, so there are a lot. That was Chris, by the way. Chris Hopkins, our assistant producer. So there are lots of blocks. The boardwalk just goes on and on and on and on. And along the boardwalk, you've got all the
amusement scam games and the foods and the rides.
Scam games. I like that. That's true.
Because you can never win them.
And so there's an altercation in Ocean City, and it's pretty serious. And this has been going on. It's been increasing. And largely, it's been between black and white folks. And it's sad. And the police officer, the police chief in Ocean City actually cut a video and he put it on Facebook Live, I believe. And we have that video, and I just want you to listen very carefully to what he's saying. It's very calm, very calming, and it's very assuring to the people that would go there that he's going to continue to police, but increase the police presence. But he's also not going to put up with it. And he talks about the whole theme of this podcast, and here it is.
Like you, many of our officers have been visiting or living in Ocean City all their lives. We love it here, and we're committed to keeping it safe. So I'd like to ask all of you, our residents, and our visitors to commit yourselves to doing the same. I know tension is in the air, but please take a step back. Be kind to each other, respect our differences, and help us keep Ocean City a community for all. Thank you.
Yeah, respect our differences. Be civil, all right? Use common sense.
Keep the place clean.
Yes.
Maintain a modicum of integrity so that everybody can enjoy the boardwalk for what it's intended to be enjoyed for.
And the video, by the way, I don't think we actually have that video that's on this particular podcast that he's talking about, is a video of a group of African American, what appear to be young men, somewhere in the 17 years of age to early 20s. and they just randomly, what looked like, attacked 2 people, but one in particular, and literally beat the living you-know-what out of this young man. And once again, demonstrating that the source of the anger is not rational, but race. And it's just so destructive to our country, to the fabric of our country. And you're right, there are cameras everywhere. You said that before. Cameras all over the boardwalk, so yeah, you're going to be filmed. You want to do something stupid like that. And cameras pretty much everywhere that's going to happen. So anyway, go.
Man, you know.
You're from the Jersey Shore, so you've had these issues, I'm sure, on the Jersey Shore.
Oh, God, yeah. You know, you can't go walking down some of the boardwalks in Jersey without seeing a fight. It's just...
Really?
Yeah, you know, it's just the way it is. You know, there's a lot of different...
But it shouldn't be.
Chris, you all right over there, big guy?
Chris is trying to sneeze. It's okay, Chris.
I'm trying to think, and I hear Chris over there. I'm just like, oh, my God, poor guy.
Good thing we don't have a camera of that.
I can't focus on 2 things, and I'm just like, oh, my...
Be civil, Chris.
Oh, goodness. All right, so anyways, back to my whole... So, yeah, I grew up on the Jersey Shore, and, you know... Us people from Jersey have a reputation of being less than nice to each other.
Yeah.
Justifiably so, if you ask me. But, you know, it's a shame to see these things on the boardwalk. Because what do you go to the boardwalk for? You know, family entertainment, family amusement, community. Because, you know, you have a lot of community events at the boardwalk, nights out and things like that.
Lots of families. Lots of families go to the boardwalk. Now, granted, they probably depart earlier than many others. But look, the bottom line is that there's no better way to ruin the experience of a resort town than to have this kind of violence that's occurring. And by the way, it's completely random.
Yeah.
Right? And thankfully, there were no weapons involved. But they were kicking this person. I mean, can you imagine being kicked in the head repeatedly? That's what was happening. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it makes you, you know, you sometimes you wonder what happened. You know, like did the man say anything that set the kids off or whatever it is? But
once again,
that's when you kind of
look the other way. You say, "Hey, man, it's all good. Have a good night. Hope you guys are having a good time." You can actually dismantle a situation very easily, just by using words.
Yeah.
Right. But there are people, we know that, and those people are looking for
all
trouble.
Episode who just they're
just looking for trouble.
It just boils off and goes off the deep end real quick, and it's a shame because
it is.
God.
And I do think the part of this craziness is obviously we know why much of this has happened because of the Floyd incident. But there's another thing that's caused this too, and that's the lockdowns. I think
there's so much pent up frustration.
I think people are
they've been home for months, and you know. For a lot of people, life has been significantly harder. For a lot of families, it's been significantly harder. Like, you know, some of these kids might be seeing, you know, mom or dad get laid off. They've been struggling financially. They don't know where their next paycheck or where food's coming from. And they're living by by hanging on by bare threads here.
That's exactly right. And the lockdown, I think, is really literally, I agree, it's making people crazy. It is. And speaking of that, in China, at the Civility food market in China, there is a new coronavirus has been found there. And according to Chinese authorities, they have identified a new strain, yes, you heard that correctly, a new strain of coronavirus at a massive wholesale food market in Beijing, the capital, called Civility Market. They are blaming European salmon. They said salmon from Europe has caused this new strain, and that is the source. So Beijing officials have reported 79 cases over the past 4 days, the biggest concentration.
That by 100.
Yeah, the biggest concentration of infections since February. The spate of new cases prompted officials in many parts of the city to swiftly bring back tough counter-epidemic measures, with at least 3 districts entering wartime mode. Measures imposed including erecting round-the-clock security checkpoints, closing schools, sports venues, and reinstating temperature checks at malls, supermarkets, and office buildings. There have been several economic reports that China's manufacturing economy is contracting, getting smaller, considering a desperate dragon, this is according to Conservative Treehouse, they call China the desperate dragon. It would not be out of place to consider that Beijing would react to losing an economic war or even economic position by trying to unleash a globally mitigating virus intended to target their geopolitical adversaries, such as Hong Kong, Taiwan, and the US. It's interesting. The fact that we know about these viruses now, the fact that I think we've always known about them, but now we know that they're going to be coming more frequently. And we see, for whatever reason, that they appear a lot more violent in the way they're affecting citizens as well as folks in China. It's fascinating that the Chinese, to this late date, still want to blame everything on the rest of the world when everything seems to start there. I mean, just everything by these pandemics and these awful plagues, as Trump calls them, seem to start in China. They seem to start there. We have a clip on this. Okay, it's the CNBC, hardly a conservative news outlet, complete opposite. We're going to listen to that. We're going to talk about it. Here is the clip.
As saying that the virus was detected on a chopping board at the market that had imported salmon. The impact of that was swift. The stores here, as well as delivery apps, stopped selling salmon. And today, suppliers in Europe said that the market for imported fish in China is now closed for them. So there's definitely been a very strong impact, but China would be thinking about its own economic impact of this cluster. The May data for the economy came out, and even though it showed that there's a recovery, it just wasn't a very strong recovery. Guys?
Yes, so their recovery has been very weak in China. Not a surprise because we haven't even recovered yet here in the US. But the fact of the matter is that China is already experiencing, this is the capital, by the way, Beijing. I mean, they're already experiencing another outbreak. And in China, they don't mess around with these things. They'll just remove you from society altogether and send you somewhere else. And
lock you in your home.
You just may disappear.
Well, you in your homes.
It's like, hey, I've got a one-way ticket to the Uyghur. So, so there's that. This is interesting because this is our biggest fear, right? Our biggest fear is there's going to be a second wave.
I wouldn't even call it a second wave. I would just continue this a giant continuum of the first wave, but,
Yeah, I mean, maybe. But if this is a new strain, we don't know for sure. But look, CNBC is reporting this, and as I said, CNBC is hardly an outlet that reports things right of center. They're definitely left of center, and they're talking about this, and I think it's important. It's important to understand what's happening. And meanwhile, the Trump administration has decided to keep the Canadian and Mexican borders closed indefinitely. So the administration will indefinitely continue a ban on all non-essential travel to the United States borders with Canada and Mexico, according to the Department of Homeland Security. The closure at all land ports of entry along the southern and northern borders began in late March, and it was actually set to expire in just a couple of days.
Right.
But Trump said, nope, the executive order is indefinitely now at this particular point in time. Based on the success of the existing restrictions and the emergence of additional global COVID-19 hotspots, the department will continue to limit non-essential travel at our land ports of entry with Canada and Mexico, acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolf said in a statement. This extension protects Americans while keeping essential trade and travel flowing as we reopen the American economy. Here's the key, guys. This is why I'm reading this. Immigrants who illegally cross the border between official crossing points will continue to be returned immediately to their home countries instead of being taken into custody. Customs and Border Protection has said that immediate returns prevent the spread of the virus that would occur if migrants were held in close quarters at its facilities. So here's what's kind of interesting. So the Democrats have, by and large, allowed people out of prisons early because if you're in prison, coronavirus can spread and become rampant inside the prison, kind of like nursing homes. But they're telling people in nursing homes to stay in nursing homes. They're telling prisoners you should be released. But of course, now what are they going to do when we finally said, well, if we detain illegal immigrants, they actually could die because we could have this huge outbreak of coronavirus inside the detention centers. So therefore, we're going to immediately, as we have since late March, return them back home.
It's honestly interesting because I didn't realize that was the policy of border control during this time. So, and because, it hasn't been talked about in the news, which kind of makes you realize that to a lot of people are like, maybe that does make some sense. maybe that is how we should be policing our border currently. And, you know, I do think that, you know, these travel restrictions are a good idea to maintain in place because, you know, that English family who wants to come on vacation in the United States probably shouldn't come here right now because who knows what's going to happen when they're in an airport. But also,
if they're tested, they're tested, but it's not essential.
It's not like there's anything for them to do when they get here anyway.
That's right.
I mean, everything, you know, a lot of states are still closed and like the reopenings are gradual. It's not like it's a load of fun over here right now.
So there's just so much to do. You know, you can drive around and look at things, but you can't really stop anywhere. Yeah, that's actually a really great point. I agree with you. The media has not covered the fact that we had 3 years of arguments between the mainstream media
the border
and the Trump administration over illegal immigration. And now that the borders are closed, and now that the wall continues to be built,
and coronavirus is a very significant global issue.
Now suddenly they're like, well, gee, you know, Donald Trump ran in 2016 on the issue of closed borders and not closed borders with respect to illegal immigration, not with respect to commerce and so forth, but putting America first and certainly stopping illegal immigration and getting MS-13 out of this country, these kinds of issues. He did that for 3 years. The media attacked him. And now suddenly COVID comes along and they're like, you know what? He was right all 3 years. He was absolutely right because we're not even going to complain that he's closed the borders because of the fact that it just makes too much sense.
Yeah, because what if COVID becomes an issue, or what kind of, you know, health issues would we have if we were to put all of our, you know, these immigrant detainees in, you know, quarters the way that we do casually, and you know that'd be a huge health issue, and so that's why.
Why hasn't the media even brought this up? Why hasn't the media even said, "Hey, we know we talked about this for 3 years"?
Because I think public perception would agree that it's probably not the best time for us to be, you know, detaining people and putting them in close proximity, and especially during COVID-19. I think
unless you're 92 years old and you're inside of a nursing home and you live in New York City, or the state of New York. And the governor says, nah, we need you to be warehoused inside of a building with other people so that they can all, you know, get coronavirus, which of course I'm being very sarcastic here, but the fact of the matter is the media hasn't covered this issue at all. They have not talked about the fact that the border has been closed since the end of March, and suddenly the issue of immigration, illegal immigration, goes away.
We should also pay a lot of attention to this fact that the big second spike, the proverbial second spike, is coming from China. I think
the first spike came from China.
The first spike came,
which means
the second
spike's
coming from there. It is going to be very interesting to see what happens, how they combat this issue, what the numbers turn out to be, whether they close down trade from the area. I mean, by trade, I mean human travel. Because that was the big thing that happened the first time.
Talking about China, whether China does?
Whether China will do that, or whether it's...
it doesn't matter. There are a lot of... They can't travel to the United States now, unless...
But, you know, unless certain countries, then they can move from country to country and find a way, or versus, you know... because this was the issue the first time around, was that China let people who had the issue, had COVID freely move around. And then that's how they transmit it to different countries. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily... So, like, look at the issue with Iran.
But with the United States of America, that's not an issue because our borders are closed. Can you travel if you're essential to the U.S.?
Essential travel,
but you would have to be tested.
Because Mark, this is Beijing. This is the head of diplomacy. This is where diplomacy for China happens. You know, some of these people who might get it, they're essential diplomats. They're trade officials. They're people who are going to be going to a lot of different countries. And they might not be very forthright or open, or may not even know that they have it. And that, you know, that's how Iran had their big initial surge. Was, you know, China and Iran have very close, you know, foreign relations, and their diplomats came into China, into Iran with this thing. And so it's like we have to be very careful and very vigilant in watching China as they continue to police themselves per se.
No doubt in my mind. So next up, we have the dumbest bill in America. It's the dumbest bill in America. Do we have a lead up, Mr. Assistant Producer? Yep. And here it is. Dum 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 dum. And it's the dumbest bill in America. And we are going to be very cautious when we discuss this very dumb bill in America because it is at the center of the American psyche as we speak. And it's about, the dumbest bill is canceling history. Canceling history. And to be specific, to be specific, Senator Elizabeth Warren wants to cancel any and all names used at military bases. In other words, the military base has a name, it's camp whatever, and she wants to get rid of those names that in any way, shape, or form were used, the names that were used during the Confederacy or during the Civil War.
That were Civil War generals or Confederate generals.
That's exactly right. She wants to get rid of those names. And we think, first of all, I'm not going to say we, I'm going to say me. Apparently, there are some Republicans who have signed on to her bill in the United States Senate. The President of the United States says he will veto it. I have no doubt that he will. Look, here's the problem with cancel culture. You can take any individual issue and say, I want to cancel that, any individual part of history, and say, I want to cancel that. And by itself, you can say, oh, well, let me give you all the reasons I'm going to justify canceling that part of history. Then the cancel culture comes at you at the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. So we have a great example of this. A great example. In the state of Maryland, there is a historical marker on the State House. And many of you may know that the state of Maryland, the State House in Maryland at one point was the headquarters during the Revolutionary War. And it was the seat of government, if you will. Not the headquarters, it was the seat of government. And the thing is, George Washington resigned his commission in Annapolis. So George Washington, after having won the Revolutionary War,
resigned his commission
against tyranny,
yes,
right? Against a tyrannical government from England, wanting democracy and wanting to establish a new republic, he resigned his commission. And the thing is, he was the most powerful person in the land. He had literally just beaten the most powerful country in the world.
And it was the first time a revolutionary had voluntarily handed over command of his military to a democratically elected legislature.
So who does that, right? In history, never before had the winner of a war, who now is all powerful, voluntarily, as you said, Derek, gave it up and said, no, I'm going to give this up because this country deserves a chance. We're going to give it to the civilian. They're going to give it to the civilian government. Give it back to the civilian government. And so, why does that matter? Well, there is an entire room in Annapolis dedicated to him, where the specific room where he resigned his commission, the way it was set up. There's a statue of him, and you can see, the statue of him as he's speaking.
Where he was standing.
It's pretty spectacular. It's worth seeing. And it really, in my opinion, it lets the hair kind of stands up on the back of your head, because you say to yourself, why did this man, why did he, all throughout history, why was he the first one to give up his commission, at the same time decide to give it back to a civilian government so the United States of America could have an opportunity? And the cancel culture, of course, hasn't gone after him yet, at least that particular room in Annapolis yet. But what they've done is, instead, they've gone to a plaque that's on the outside of the Capitol, and the plaque basically is a remembrance of those Marylanders who fought for the Confederacy and died, and fought for the Union and died. And there are two flags above that plaque, on that plaque, of the Confederate flag and the Union flag. And the purpose is to demonstrate that Maryland was a conflicted state, very much so. It was a line state, the old line state, during the Civil War, where we had people fighting against one another from the same state.
Brothers fighting brothers and cousins fighting cousins.
On both sides. And we actually have what the plaque says.
Yes.
You pull that up in the meantime. While you're pulling that up, I want to say this. 8 months ago, that plaque was the cause of great consternation, and there was talk of taking it down. We're going to talk about that. We have a clip on it, and here is the clip.
A Maryland panel voted to remove this logo and includes a Confederate flag from a plaque in the state capitol. The plaque honors the Civil War's Union and Confederate soldiers. The plaque stays, but the State House Trust voted to spend $2,400 to remove the logo itself that includes a Confederate flag and an American flag. The only person who voted against the plan, Maryland House Speaker Adrienne Jones, is the state's first black speaker. She supported removing the entire plaque instead of just the logo. Katie Johnston for WJZ.com.
So the commission decided 8 months ago to just cover the Union flag and the Confederate flag. So in other words, the American flag and the Confederate flag. And they were both on this plaque, but leave the wording on the plaque. So what they did was they covered those two flags, but left the plaque, and that was the compromise. And the Speaker of the House, the new Speaker of the House at that time, the new Speaker of the House decided that that was okay. And the new Speaker of the House is the first black woman, first African-American period, to ever be the Speaker of the House in the state of Maryland. And so the media has consistently said the Confederate plaque, the plaque sympathizes with the Confederacy. Folks, look, here's what the plaque says. First of all, it has the Union flag and the Confederate flag, and I already told you what it does. It talks about those who have died on both sides, who were Marylanders. And here is what it says. Go ahead, read it, Garrick.
By the dedication of this plaque, she leaves for posterity evidence of her remembrance of her nearly 63,000 native sons who served in the Union forces and the more than 22,000 in those of the Confederacy in the war between the states. In commemorating the centennial of that great struggle between the citizens of this temporarily divided nation in the 1860s, the Maryland Civil War Centennial Commission did not attempt to decide who was right and who was wrong, or to make decisions on other controversial issues. On the contrary, its objective was solely to commemorate important events of the war within the state and to collect and represent documents and information associated with her involvement. By doing so, it seeks to pay tribute to those who fought and died, as well as to those citizens who, during the Civil War, tried to do their duty as they saw it.
So there you have it. That's what the plaque says. And the plaque remained, that wording remained, so you could see it after that initial vote, but they covered the two flags. But you could read the plaque. That's what it said. Fast forward, now, just days ago, the same commission said, that's not enough. Because of the cancel culture, because of what's happening in America today, with presumably the Floyd death and other incidences, because of the cancel culture and the lack of civility today, we need to remove the plaque. And we have a clip of the Speaker of the House, and we also, basically that they voted to remove the plaque. I mean, that's what they did, bottom line. And here is the clip.
Wanted it taken down.
House Speaker Adrienne Jones pushing once more to remove this Civil War plaque from the Maryland State House. It'll take a majority vote from the members of the State House Trust.
I think they need to be able to look at in terms of both sides put yourself in our shoes. Perhaps you'll see why this is hurtful for those of us of color.
So it's certainly understandable that the Speaker of the House, and I want to say this for the record, the Speaker of the House is black. It's certainly understandable the Speaker of the House would say, wow, here's a plaque that talks about what happened in Maryland. The Centennial Commission, 100 years after the Civil War, decided to put this plaque on the State House to remember what had happened in Maryland. And you heard what the plaque actually said, because Garrick read it, and it in no way glorifies the Confederacy. It doesn't do that at all. In fact, what it does is, it is a historical marker of, hey, this is what happened here. It probably was going to offend some, and probably, if not all, but it happened here. It's part of history. We can't cancel it. What we need you to do instead is to learn from it. That's what we need you to do. The Speaker of the House unfortunately convinced the other members to remove the plaque, so the plaque is no longer there. And so we have, once again, taken one more tool in the toolbox to teach people about our country's history, and the good and the bad, by the way, but also our state's history, the state of Maryland's history, the fact that it was on both sides, as you said, brothers on two different sides of the war. Go. I want to hear the millennial perspective on this more than anything else before I go back.
So I think that when you're talking about these plaques in the Capitol, one that seems to me a little nondescript like this one, I think we can have a separate conversation about bases and certain statues in certain places, but with respect to this specific plaque, the Annapolis State House is the oldest, longest used state house in the United States.
Yep.
It is a collection of all of Maryland's history from start to finish.
Yep.
It is where you can learn the full extent of all the things that Maryland has done. Like we said, you know, the great things of George Washington, you know, and the things that he did in Annapolis and in Maryland, but also, you know, the bad things that Maryland's done. You know, there were Confederate rebel sympathizers who, you know, who fought for to maintain the institution of slavery. But you can have these things in the State House where people want to come to learn about the state and all the things that it encompasses. And, you know, with this plaque particularly, given that I don't think it's you know, provocative in any way, I don't understand what it does to really rectify the issue, you know.
So let me tell you something the speaker did. This is important for podcast listeners. So Maryland is home to Frederick Douglass. Maryland is home to Harriet Tubman.
Yes.
The so-called founder, as well as the symbol of resistance and the Underground Railroad, if you will.
Yeah.
And Frederick Douglass, of course, was a Republican. And you know what we did? The state decided to finally to honor Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman in the state capitol. And because now, I will be the first to admit, it's long overdue, right? Long overdue. But it finally happened. And I just think it's interesting that, you know, you put Republicans inside the House of Delegates, finally, you know, statues of black Republicans. But the Democrats were the ones who were the slaveholders in Maryland, by the way. And here I am, a Republican, and I'm saying, look, I don't want this history to stay because I think, you know, those were the good old days or anything like that. It's the opposite. I want it to stay because we are here in the United States of America in the 21st century, in 2020, literally engaged in what I see as a pre-Civil War of people who are trying to cancel our culture and cancel our history. And if there were ever a time when we need to learn from that history, now would be that time about how destructive a civil war is. And we need to learn from that history. We need to learn. We need to stop looking at this and saying to ourselves, it's uncomfortable, therefore we must erase it. Because if that is really the standard, then we need to go back into the state capitol and we need to remove the entire room that George Washington is in, remove George Washington, remove all that history because he owned slaves as well. Thoughts on this, Mr. Millennial?
Oh, I don't think I have much more to add there.
Yes, you do. Come on, I want the millennial perspective.
The millennial perspective. Yeah. How about let's talk about, you know, the original Warren bill, right? Let's go back to that.
Yeah, which she wants to, just to restate, she wants to rename military bases that are named after Confederate generals.
Right. So the U.S. Armed Services Committee, which is led by Republicans in the Senate, gave the Department of Defense 2 years. They signed this bill. They gave them 2 years to effectively come up with a plan to change the names for a lot of these bases. And as a millennial, and I don't have an issue with this. You know, when I see specifically when we're talking about military bases, you know, to me it is a different conversation than talking about these plaques in these state houses where you're really effectively talking about your state's history and you're supposed to be teaching, you know, what the state has done in various different points.
And the progress the state
has made on race relations. You know, so like when I see military bases that are named after generals who fought against the U.S. Army, I don't have a problem changing those names. That doesn't bother me. I also don't think that, you know, takes the history out of it because there's still teaching moments and there's still other ways to teach about these issues. But when you're talking about a state and the way that the state conveys its information on people, I think that, you know, these plaques and these documented histories that are on display for people make it easy.
Okay. No, I wanted to give you the time. Look, so these generals who fought, these are names of military bases. And when you go to military school, whether it's West Point or the Air Force Academy or the United States Naval Academy, whenever you do that, you're learning about all of these wars. And you're learning about all these generals.
People on both sides of it. Yeah.
And you're learning about what worked and what didn't work, all right? And the benefit of learning that history and to be studied in history and educated in history is so obviously that you don't make similar mistakes again with respect to future wars, future conflicts with adversaries overseas.
Yeah, my thing is I don't see that bases are, a part, the name of a base is instrumental in achieving that aim. I would all for teaching why Pickett's charge at Gettysburg was one of the most disastrous military blunders in history. That is of course something that should be discussed in the classes, in the classrooms with these, upcoming inspiring officers. But to me, I just don't see bases as a tool.
And here's the problem I have with millennials with respect to this whole issue is millennials, from what I have seen, are unwilling to take a stand because it's hard, because it's uncomfortable to take a stand to say, well, you know what? If they come for George Washington in his room where he resigned his commission, and he created probably one of the single most important historical moments in human history, where civilian authority ruled over military authority.
Right.
And that's where it happened. Would you guys stand up for that? And that's my problem, because I don't think that you guys ever really have a line in the sand with respect to the importance of learning why that was important, the importance of that history and why it should be passed down. Just like the importance of learning about the Civil War and understanding why that was so damaging to our country, but at the same time so helpful, and it preserved the country obviously we're still imperfect, we see that. Help me out here, because it's a complicated subject, but the fact of the matter is, and I think I said it well before, we just need to be able to have a discussion with each other that I know it's uncomfortable, all right? I know it's uncomfortable, but we need to talk about it.
Yeah, so I think the one thing we should say is that everybody in history is deeply flawed. No human being is perfect. It is just truly an impossible concept. Perfection. You can always find fault no matter who. But I think.
How about MLK and his opposition to gay marriage? Right?
That wouldn't fly by today's standards.
But according to cancel culture, every single street that is named after him, which there are tons of them across the country, and every single statue should come down.
Right. But it's about finding where the line is.
No. I see. That's where I disagree. Either it's either part of history, and you learn from it, and we stop getting away from this participation trophy of, I didn't get a trophy, so therefore I'm going to tear it down, or we cancel everything, which is what
but I don't see these as like absolutes in either way. Like we should leave everything, or we shouldn't. Like I think that certain things can embody certain messages. Like we can effectively teach history, but we don't need the names of bases to reflect that.
Right.
I think we can talk about George Washington doing all these things, but we should also understand that he owned slaves, and that was a terrible thing to do. And we can still take all the great things that Martin Luther King did for race relations.
What's the difference between Washington owning slaves and someone fighting to keep their slaves in the Civil War? That's what I'm saying. It's cancel culture should be applied equally. Either you get rid of both,
because we're talking about. Because to me, I don't even think the issue, because you're talking about military bases designated for U.S. generals who fought not for the United States.
Sure.
So, and that's the way where I come from for that perspective, is we're talking about people who didn't fight for the U.S. It would be like if I named it Fort Bernard Montgomery after, a general in England. Like I wouldn't do that irregardless.
Look, what I favor is, and I just want podcast listeners to listen to this, because I have no doubt that I have enemies out there who would love to use this against me. And I want to make this really clear. The way you bring in context is to continue to honor those great people who have been forgotten, like Frederick Douglass, where there's this stunning statue of him in Annapolis, and Harriet Tubman, where there's this stunning statue of her there as well. And you continue to honor those people who have made a true difference in progress in the United States of America to bring us toward a more perfect union. And that is what I would like to see, versus the cancel culture of saying, I'm offended, therefore it's all got to go, and I don't even care if I ever have to learn from it, because I'm not going to. I know everything there is to know, which unfortunately is what so many millennials think. You get the final say on this one.
Do I have a couple seconds? Because
Yes,
I have a cool
quick.
story. So one of the cool things that I got to do while I was in college is I interned in the U.S. Senate, and you're effectively a tour guide for half of your job. And you go through the collection of statues in the Capitol, which is monumentously huge. They're awesome to look at. They're great history. And I think one of the things that they do there, which may be in line with the thing that you're advocating for, is Jefferson Davis is in Statuary Hall. He was the president of the Confederacy, but there is a statue that sits across the room from him, and it is designed and made to have that figure look directly at Jefferson Davis, and it is Rosa Parks. And when
Very good.
myself as well as a bunch of other tour guys come in, you always make a point of talking about, yes, unfortunately Jefferson Davis is here, and it was a dark point in human history. But also, over there is Rosa Parks, who is, quote unquote, as we make the joke, keeping an eye on Jefferson Davis. And, there is...
Look, you can make the same argument in Maryland. You could say that Roger Brooks Taney, the author, a Marylander and the author of the Dred Scott decision, which set off the Civil War, should have next to him Thurgood Marshall, and Thurgood Marshall should be looking right at him. And quite frankly, I think everybody, including posterity, will look at Thurgood Marshall and say, not only did he win, but he was 100% right.
Yeah.
He was...
There was no... Yeah, the decisions of Taney were incorrect at best.
But to have them there is important so you can learn. It's like, well, how did we get a Thurgood Marshall? Well, we had this guy, he also happened to be a Marylander, and he basically set off a civil war, and it was probably a war that had to be fought. There are a lot of different ideas about this, of course, but the fact of the matter is that what he did was wrong, and he was on the wrong side, and here's why he was on the wrong side, and use it as a teaching moment. That's all I'm saying. The boomers believe in teaching moments because we believe history does repeat itself. Unfortunately, with our public education, and I'm going to say this very clearly, with our K-12 public education system in America today, teachers don't want to teach difficult subjects because some parent might come in and go, I'm offended that you're teaching about that. And it's just my thought. Okay, now this is your final thought. Then we got to go.
I think we're good leaving off on that one. We won't inundate people too much.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. We're going to discuss this again, by the way.
Because I have no doubt this will be in the news again.
No home. Again, cancel culture has no end. There's no way to solve it because that's the whole point, right? They're not happy until the United States of America is destroyed as a country and we have anarchy, until we have Chaz. That's it for Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to our millennial, Garrick Ross, and of course our producer, Adam Couture, our assistant producer, Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our website. See you next time.